Welcome to Restoria, your cozy corner for gentle bedtime stories. My name is James and I'll be your host tonight. Every night, we bring you peaceful tales designed to calm your mind and help you drift off into a deep, restful sleep. So snuggle in, close your eyes, and let the story begin. The story tonight is called The Petal Lake Crossing, Chapter 1. The First Petals. In the folds of a valley that few maps dared to name, there was a lake, so still it seemed made of glass. Not a ripple disturbed its surface, not even when birds flew overhead, or when deer came to drink at dawn. This was Petal Lake. The name came not from color or shape, but from the ancient trees that circled its edge. Tall and silver-barked, they bore blossoms that bloomed only at night. As twilight deepened and the first star appeared, the blossoms would open like sighs, releasing their petals one by one. Each petal would float down, catching the last of the golden light before touching the lake's surface. Then it would drift outward, joining 1,000 others like a gentle constellation spread across water. At the lake's edge, half hidden by willow fronds and thyme, was a mossy wooden dock. It creaked but did not complain. And tied to this dock was a single wooden boat, humble and small, with sides smoothed by years of hands and weather. Lanterns hung from curved branches at its front and back, glowing like sleepy fireflies. Inside were soft cushions stitched from cloud-colored fabric and a single folded blanket of deep forest green. It was here that Lena arrived. She came not with great fanfare, nor with certainty. Her boots were dusty, her shoulders slumped beneath the weight of a well-worn satchel. She had walked many roads, passed many towns, spoken many fewer words. Her journey had begun long ago, for reasons she could no longer recall, clearly only that someone, somewhere, once told her. Petal Lake is the kind of place where you can find yourself without looking. And now, the lake was before her, waiting. She stepped onto the dock, and it sighed softly beneath her weight. The boat bobbed once, as though it, too, was breathing. Lena reached out and touched its worn edge. It was warm, as if it had been waiting in sunlight, though the sun had already dipped behind the hills. She stepped in. The boat barely shifted. The moment she settled onto one of the cushions, the mooring line slipped loosened by her hand and the boat began to drift. It moved without oar or sail, without paddle or push. The current, if it existed at all, was invisible, but it guided the vessel forward, slowly, like a lullaby in motion. Lena leaned back. Above her, the sky was deepening into shades of violet and blue. The first stars blinked into view, reflected perfectly on the lake's glassy skin. Blossoms stirred in the trees. One petal, pale pink and glowing faintly, swirled through the air and landed in her lap. Others followed white, lavender, soft peach each, spinning slowly before joining the lake's drifting mosaic. Lena watched them without thought. For once, she wasn't wondering where she was headed or how long it would take. She didn't ask herself if this was the right path or if she was wasting time. There was no rush here, no destination to chase. The boat floated. The petals fell. The lake whispered. Sometimes she thought she saw shapes in the clouds, gentle animals, cradled moons, outstretched hands. Other times, the rustle of leaves sounded like old lullabies she didn't know she remembered. A hush wrapped around her like a woolen shawl, and even her thoughts seemed to slow, drifting away like tiny boats of their own. She pulled the green blanket over her legs and let herself sink into the cushions. Her body, usually tense from travel, unwound. Her breath deepened. Her heart no longer raced ahead of her. The boat passed under a branch heavy with blossoms. A few petals slipped in through the open canopy and settled on her shoulder, her hands, her knees. She did not brush them away. Night fell fully. The stars above grew bright, mirrored exactly below. The world became symmetrical, sky and lake indistinguishable, as if Lena floated through the space between them. She did not sleep, not exactly, but she rested in a way deeper than sleep. Her thoughts slowed to the pace of petals, her heart quiet. And as the boat continued its slow drift toward a far shore she could not yet see, Lena let go of the maps she once carried in her mind. She let go of names, of questions, of the reasons she had left. She was here. That was enough. And Petal Lake, in its infinite stillness, embraced her gently, petal by petal, hush by hush, into its quiet crossing. Chapter 2: Reflections and Ripples. Lena awoke to the soft sound of water lapping gently against the side of the boat. She hadn't meant to sleep, and in truth, she had not fully. It was the kind of rest that floats at the edge of dreams, quiet and slow. She stretched beneath the forest green blanket, brushing a few petals from her lap. The world around her had shifted subtly. Dawn had not yet arrived, but the sky had changed from ink dark to a deep, silvery blue. The stars above were fewer now, fading softly like candles in morning mist, but the lake still reflected them, as if reluctant to let go of the night. Lena sat up, her body still slow but not stiff. She felt lighter, like the heaviness she'd been carrying for so long had begun to drift away, piece by piece, the way petals did when they let go of their branches. She glanced over the side of the boat. The water was perfectly clear beneath the drifting petals, not murky, not muddied by time. She could see into it, see her reflection, soft and shimmering, but the reflection didn't mimic her movements exactly. It blinked slower, tilted its head differently, smiled faintly when Lena didn't. She blinked and looked again. Her reflection returned to normal, her own familiar face gazing up at her. But something lingered, a feeling that maybe the lake showed not just what was, but what could be. A breeze rustled through the blossoming trees, sending another wave of petals down. One landed on her shoulder. She let it rest there, its soft weight like a companion. Lena reached into her satchel, more out of habit than purpose. She pulled out a small book, leather bound and worn at the edges. Inside were pages of notes, drawings, scraps of thoughts from years of wandering, maps to places she never reached, questions without answers, memories without context. She turned to a blank page and stared. For a moment, she considered writing something, but the stillness around her asked for quiet. Instead, she traced her finger over the page, as if remembering the shape of letters before they were born. A ripple stirred the boat. It was small, barely there, but noticeable. Lena looked up. Across the water, some distance away, another boat drifted slowly by. It was similar to hers, with soft lanterns and blooming petals scattered across its bow. But this one was empty. No rower, no passenger, just a vessel gliding silently through the lake's mirrored surface. She watched it pass, wondering where it had come from and where it would go. For a moment, the two boats moved in parallel, close enough that she could see her own boat's reflection echoed in the other's curve. Then, as gently as it had appeared, the second boat veered away and disappeared into the veil of mist rising over the lake. She didn't feel alone. The presence of that other boat, so peaceful, so certain in its aimless drift, comforted her. It was as if the lake had more than one path, more than one journey happening at once. Each passenger riding their own current, each finding stillness in their own time. Lena leaned back once more, cradled by cushions. Overhead, the trees shifted in the wind. A branch dipped lower than the rest, its blossoms brushing the top of her head like a blessing. She closed her eyes. This time, she did dream. She dreamt of petals falling through stars, of voices that didn't speak in words but in feelings. She dreamt of the sound of her own laughter, distant but clear, echoing off water and sky, and of someone he couldn't see who sitting across from her in the boat, holding a cup of tea that smelled like pine and honey. When she woke, the sky had lightened even more. The first streaks of dawn touched the horizon with the color of soft peach and rose gold. The petals on the lake glowed in the light, each one catching the sunrise as if in celebration. Lena looked around. The mist was lifting slightly, revealing hints of distant shorelines she hadn't seen before. Not close, not yet, but there. She placed her hand into the water. It was cool, not cold, and smooth as silk. Tiny ripples spread from her fingers, making the reflection shimmer and dance. For the first time in what felt like a very long while, Lena smiled. She didn't know how long the journey would take. She didn't know what lay at the other end of the lake. But she knew something important now. She didn't need the answers. The boat would carry her. The petals would fall. And she would drift, quietly, gently, into whatever waited beyond the next hush of wind. The crossing had only just begun. Chapter 3. The Boat of Echoes. The sun had not yet risen, but the sky above Petal Lake had softened into a quiet silver, like breath on cold glass. The lanterns hanging from Lena's boat glowed faintly still, their light not fading but gently adjusting to the waking world. The mist continued to drift across the lake in slow curls, whispering around the edges of the boat like curious spirits. Lena sat upright now, hands folded in her lap, her gaze on the horizon where the water and sky still held hands. She thought of the empty boat she had seen the night before. It hadn't felt haunting. In fact, it had seemed peaceful-like, a whisper of something important she hadn't yet understood. As if in answer to her thoughts, a sound rippled across the lake, a soft bell, delicate and distant. It wasn't harsh like a church bell or sharp like an alarm. It was more like a wind chime made from glass petals, ringing once with perfect clarity, then vanishing into the mist. The boat responded, turning slightly, though no hands guided it. Lena said nothing, but she sat up straighter, alert in a calm way, as though being summoned by a lullaby. The lake widened here. The petals were fewer but more widely scattered, each drifting like a memory remembered just before sleep. The boat moved toward a narrow inlet shaded by trees whose blossoms were deeper in humid night purple and dusky rose. As the boat entered the inlet, the water grew impossibly still. The reflection of the trees above was so sharp, Lena felt she could reach through the surface and touch the sky itself. Then she saw it. Another boat. But this one was not empty. It floated nearby, facing hers. Inside sat a girl, perhaps younger than Lena, perhaps not wrapped in a blue shawl that shimmered like moonlight on snow. Her hair was dark, her posture quiet. She looked straight at Lena with eyes that held a strange knowing. Lena stared back. Neither spoke. The boats did not touch, but they drew close, like two stars drifting in orbit. The girl raised one hand, palm up, and a single petal floated down from above and landed gently in it. She held it out, as if offering it to Lena across the space between them. Lena reached out, but her fingers touched only air. The petal did not leave the girl's hand. Instead, the girl closed her palm again and whispered something, not a word, not a phrase, just a sound, a tone. Lena felt it more than heard it. It was a note that resonated in her chest, like the memory of a song her mother once hummed when brushing her hair, or the wind on the windowsill the night she first left home, or the final quiet moment before falling into a dream. The girl nodded once, and her boat began to drift away. Lena opened her mouth to call out, to ask who she was, but no sound came. It wasn't that she couldn't speak, it was that silence was the answer. The girl's boat faded into the mist just as the chime rang again once, clear and sweet. Then it was gone. Lena sat very still. In the hush that followed, she noticed something new. In the center of her boat, resting on the cushion beside her, was a petal unlike the others. It was larger, nearly the size of her palm, and its color shifted gently in the light lavender, then silver, then the softest gold. She picked it up. It was warm. On its surface, etched so faintly it was almost invisible, were tiny lines like a pattern, or perhaps words. She traced them with her finger. The marks didn't form any language she recognized, but she understood them anyway. You are not alone in your quiet. Lena held the petal to her chest and closed her eyes. The boat drifted forward once again, slower now, the current gentle and lulling. The mist parted just enough for rays of pale morning light to reach the water, setting the scattered petals aglow. She felt no urgency, no ache to chase after the girl or demand answers. Some things, she now knew, were meant to be felt, not solved. And so, she let herself breathe. The boat rocked softly. The petals turned in lazy circles, and Lena, with her hand still over her heart, let the silence wrap around her like a second shawl. Somewhere ahead, the lake continued, and so did she. Chapter 4: The Drift of Memory. As the lake widened once more, the trees drew back, leaving a stretch of open water painted in morning gold. The petals here floated more slowly, like thoughts lingering just before being spoken. Lena's boat moved gently through them, stirring quiet trails in its wake. The air had changed. It held the warmth of early sunlight now, and with it came a scent not floral, not earthy, but something in between, like the memory of a place once loved. Familiar, but unreachable. Lena rested her hands in her lap, still holding the shimmering petal from before. The strange inscription felt rather than read lingered in her thoughts. You are not alone in your quiet. She looked into the lake and found her reflection once again, but today it did not mimic her. It moved slower. It tilted its head just so, and when Lena looked away and back again, it smiled faintly. A sound broke the silence, not a chime this time, but a soft rustling, as though someone were flipping through the pages of a book. Curious, Lena turned. There, nestled near the back of the boat, was a book she hadn't brought. Bound in dark green cloth, with threads of silver woven through, it pulsed gently, as if breathing. Its cover bore no title, only a small symbol pressed into the fabric, a single falling petal. Lena opened it. Inside, the pages were not blank. They were filled with scenes she hadn't expected to see sketched in soft charcoal, with strokes that moved like drifting fog. The first was a picture of a young girl, seated by a window, drawing maps in the corners of notebooks. Her eyes were wide, her shoulders hunched. Lena recognized her instantly. She turned the page. Another sketch. The same girl, older now, standing on a path that forked in 3 directions. She looked tired. Behind her, scribbled shadows reached for her coat. Another. Walking, always walking, across rain, slick roads, through forests with too many turns, through cities that echoed with voices not her own. Each page showed her, not always clearly, not always kindly, but truthfully. She paused at a picture unlike the others. This one was empty at first glance, just a stretch of lake and sky. But when she turned it slightly in the light, a faint figure appeared herself in the boat, surrounded by falling petals. In the margin beside it, someone had written in soft looping script, "This is what rest looks like." Lena traced the words with her fingertip. Her throat felt tight, but not from sadness. It was something else, something softer, a loosening, perhaps. The slow undoing of knots she hadn't known she'd tied. The book shifted as she held it, and she noticed a ribbon tucked near the back. She opened to the marked page. There, nestled in the center, was a letter. It was addressed to her by name. She hesitated, then unfolded it. The paper was thick, textured like dried leaves. The handwriting was careful. "Lena, you came far. You looked for things you didn't need to find. You carried weights you were never meant to hold. But you came anyway. Let this be the place you set it all down, not to forget, but to rest. You are not lost. You are simply still. A friend in the quiet." Lena folded the letter slowly and held it against her chest. The lake around her sparkled. Ahead, the faintest shape of a distant shore began to appear, still far, still wrapped in morning mist. But there, waiting, not demanding, just present. The boat drifted onward, and Lena, with the letter beside her heart and the petal resting gently in her palm, closed her eyes. She let herself remember not the questions, not the worries, but the moments in between. The laughter between storms. The silence after a kind word. The weight of a warm blanket on a rainy afternoon. Her own breath, rising and falling like waves. She was not racing toward an answer. She was floating through the spaces that had always waited for her to pause. And as the book rested in her lap and the petals danced beside her, Lena felt something shift inside. The journey was not over, but something inside her had come home. Chapter 5. Beneath the Blossoms. The boat glided steadily onward, and the air around Lena had turned golden rich with late morning light and the subtle warmth that asked nothing of her. The petals still drifted, though more sparsely now. Each one felt like a moment paused in midair, taking its time to land. The trees returned, tall and graceful, their blossoms whispering overhead. But here, in this stretch of the lake, the trees leaned closer, their branches bowing toward the water. Some even dipped their blossoms directly into the surface, scattering petals with the gentleness of a blessing. Lena noticed the way the boat slowed, as if savoring the passage through this place. The water beneath them was deeper now, its color shifting to a cool indigo, touched with green. The reflection of the canopy above made it feel like the boat floated between two worlds, ski and lake, leaf and light. She looked to the trees and saw something nestled among the branches. Small platforms, cradled in the arms of the trees, woven from vines and petal fiber, like hammocks for dreaming. And in a few of them, though she couldn't be sure, saw figures. Some sat cross-legged, heads tilted back in peaceful thought. Others reclined, arms folded over their chests, as though sleeping in stillness. They made no sound. They did not move. But Lena could feel their presence like dreams suspended in air. A soft wind stirred the petals. One landed in her boat and shimmered briefly, then dissolved into a faint, glowing mist. Then she heard the hush. It wasn't a silence, exactly. More a sound so soft it curled around the edge of awareness, like breath, like the quiet between waves. And in that hush, Lena remembered something she hadn't thought of in years. A single afternoon she was a child, tucked beneath a blanket, her mother beside her, reading stories aloud. The room had been dim, the rain gentle, and the voice had been calm, low, and steady. She hadn't remembered the story itself, only the comfort it carried. She whispered, "I'd forgotten." A blossom overhead drifted loose and landed gently in her hand. Its petals pulsed faintly, and when she looked into its center, she saw a flicker of that memory again, clearer this time, as if the lake had cupped it and handed it back. The hush grew warmer. Her boat paused in the stillness, cradled beneath the arches of the blossom trees. A breeze stirred again, and with it came the gentle sounds of Belstany, far off, like laughter carried on wind. They reminded her of joy she hadn't let herself feel in a long while. Then, just ahead, she saw a new shape on the water. Another boat, but this one, unlike the others, it was wider, flatter, almost like a floating garden. On it, flowers bloomed from mossy patches, and lanterns shaped like curled leaves swayed gently from thin branches. At its center stood an arch made of woven twigs, held together with glowing thread. As her boat drifted closer, it adjusted its path slowly, reverently, until it floated beside the larger vessel. The two boats did not touch, but Lena could feel the invitation in the air. She stood. Her legs were steady, her hands open. She stepped lightly onto the garden boat, petals crunching beneath her feet like soft snow. Inside the arch, a cushion waited. She sat, and for the first time, she felt still not as a traveler or a dreamer, but as someone home. There was nothing to chase, nothing to flee. The moment stretched wide around her, expansive and kind. From the petals in the trees, from the lanterns in the air, came the gentle knowing that this place was not an end. It was a resting point, a quiet in-between. And sometimes, those were the most sacred places of all. She looked up through the arch. The sky had cleared completely, soft and endless. A few birds glided past, silent but graceful, and far across the water, she saw the outline of the far shore closer now. Not yet reached, but waiting. The hush returned, not as absence, but as presence. Lena closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and let the moment wrap around her. Beneath the blossoms, with petals falling like prayers, she rested. The boat, once again, began to drift. Chapter 6: The Far Shore. The garden boat floated silently, carrying Lena beneath a sky that had ripened to a soft, glowing blue. The petals still fell, though fewer know each one, a punctuation mark at the end of a long, gentle sentence. She sat beneath the woven arch, her legs folded, eyes half-lidded, heart quiet. The hush she had carried through the lake had deepened, grown into something steady. Not emptiness, not numbness, but presence, a quiet that listened back. Ahead, the far shore grew clearer. It was unlike the place where she had begun. The trees were taller here, their trunks silver white and spaced widely enough to let the light through in golden beams. Ferns blanketed the forest floor, glowing faintly with dew. There were no buildings, no signs of a village or path, but Lena felt, without knowing why, that people had passed through this place, that dreams had walked these woods. As the boat reached the edge of the water, it slowed and nestled into a mossy bank, brushing gently against smooth stone. The cushions rustled beneath her. The boat had arrived. Lena stood. She stepped onto the shore, her boots landing softly on the moss. The forest air was cool and sweet, like mint and distant rain. Behind her, the boat remained, but its lanterns had dimmed. No longer guiding, now resting. She looked back only once. The lake shimmered in the daylight. Far across it, the blossom trees leaned lazily into the breeze. Petals still danced across the surface, timeless, tireless. The lake, she knew, would always be there, waiting, floating, guiding the quiet-hearted home. She walked into the trees. There was no trail, but she didn't need one. Her feet moved with trust. Her steps found rhythm. And soon, she came to a small clearing bathed in dappled sunlight. In the center was a smooth stone bench. Resting atop it was something she hadn't expected, her satchel, the very same she had brought to the lake's edge. She picked it up and opened it. It was lighter now. The papers and maps were gone. In their place, the green-bound book, the glowing petal, the letter. She smiled. Lena sat on the bench. For a long while, she simply listened. To birdsong above, to the breeze between the trees, to her own breath as it moved without effort. Then, from somewhere just beyond the clearing, came the sound of water again. Another stream, perhaps, or another lake. The world beyond Petal Lake was still wide, still full of paths, but something inside her had changed. She would walk with a different rhythm now, not searching, but seeing, not chasing, but choosing. She stood, adjusted her satchel, and began to walk. The forest welcomed her, and far behind, the garden boat loosened from the moss and began to drift back across the lake, its lanterns relighting one by one. It would return to the dock. It would wait for the next traveler, the next streamer who needed quiet, the next soul who had wandered too long without stillness. And the petals would fall, and the hush would return, and somewhere in the space between breath and sky, another journey would begin. Lena walked on, no longer lost, just peaceful, just ready, just home.